I'm hosting this new podcast. I'm Neil Feldman, and today we're here with Michael Sikand. Michael, you're a super awesome guy. And during COVID, you went out and started podcasting to make the business world more accessible to young people. You launched a media brand called Our Future. You really just scaled it by cold emailing people. And you got in touch with super awesome business leaders like the CMO of Chipotle, the CEO of DocuSign, the CFO of Spotify, the CMO of the New York Times, just to name a few. And now you have this major media brand that gets millions of views every week, and you've been doing some really awesome things. So today we're going to talk about how you got started and how other entrepreneurially minded young people like myself can copy your journey. So tell me what it was like on day zero getting started. How did you get inspired to build a major media brand and just start cold emailing CEOs?
Well, thank you for the introduction, Neil. I'm really excited to be your first guest. I was sent home due to COVID. My friend's dad ran a tech publication in town, and he wanted an article written on the state of VC during the coronavirus pandemic. I was really looking for an outlet to work. I didn't have an internship lined up. I had one that might have gone through, but it was canceled. So I was just looking for an outlet for work and for excitement and to do something cool. I had written articles for my high school newspaper. I took them up on the offer. I got to speak to 3 VCs and I was instantly entranced. I loved learning from them. I loved asking questions, leading with my curiosity. And that's when it occurred to me that from a media perspective, I was a big avid reader of Forbes and Business Week and Bloomberg and, Wall Street Journal, but I realized that content isn't really designed for young people. And then I was also a big podcast fan, and I was like, oh, I love How I Built This. Like I love Masters of Scale, or I love these major business kind of media companies like Morning Brew or whatever. But I was like, these kind of formats, these publications aren't really speaking to people like me who are young and are trying to learn their way. And I thought I could be a great kind of middleman to go and find people and translate their insights through guiding a great conversation into, a digestible, exciting, and educational product through the form of an audio podcast for people like me to learn about different careers and learn about different strategies and learn about, really cool topics from people at really dope companies. So that was the thesis behind it all. And day one, couldn't stop jumping around with excitement. And after that first episode was published, after I pressed publish, I started rolling down a hill that I still am, rolling down. And the incline keeps getting steeper, which is cool.
That's very awesome. Tell me a little bit more about the venture capitalists that you interviewed. Did they form the first podcast episode, or was that just for the article?
They were part of an article, but I interviewed them and recorded their statements and stuff. So it was like a little bit of like getting into that whole like mode of like recording someone and, asking them questions and hunting for like good answers and stuff. So those VCs ended up becoming good friends of mine, actually. They're all very successful guys. One of them just had their startup invested in by Leonardo DiCaprio. It creates packaging out of shrimp, like the exoskeletons of shrimp. It's based in town. Another one became an advisor and helped me investigate some fundraising that we were previously planning on doing. And then the other guy, like I ended up nearly doing like a consulting deal with them. So it's like those 3 relationships, just by like using my curiosity and interviewing these people, they saw a spark in me, and it enabled me to build relationships with them and then potentially, do like a business deal with them. In one way or another. So opened up a lot of doors and ended up launching me on the interview journey.
That's very awesome. That's really similar to how I got started doing this podcasting, started networking with these venture capitalists, and then I was able to help them out with some intros. And now I'm on the podcast journey similar to yourself. So it's super, super awesome to see the crossover of the backgrounds. So tell me what it was like scaling the podcast. How did you go from episode 1 to all of these tier 1 business executives talking to you? Why do you think they read your emails?
Yeah, well, I think it came at an interesting time. Like when COVID hit, I was like, hey, a lot of my peers have had their internships canceled. Your company canceled internships. Can you come on a podcast and share 30 minutes of advice with a lot of young people who are going through a tough time? And then the pitch ended up evolving into something bigger. It was like, I'm building the go-to business podcast for Gen Z. This gets thousands of views, millions of views on TikTok, or we're something of importance of value. We've had all these huge guests from major Fortune 500s and these recognizable names. But the original pitch was more like, let me tap my existing network. So what I did was I interviewed my dad as my second interview, my friend's mom as my first, and then I worked my way up out of my own network. The third interview was in my network, and then the fourth was someone who went to University of Michigan. So I started using the Michigan network, is where I went to college. So that's another great tool you can use if you're a student listening to this, your school, your high school, or your college, and using alumni, meeting them. And then I eventually built enough credibility and enough experience and enough know-how to start reaching out to people who did not go to my university, and to really just begin that process of building a podcast that was not relational to my existing network and like reaching out to people cold. And I think the key was like building that initial credibility, that initial minimum viable product, and then being able to scale it to users like outside of that community.
That's super awesome. I think that's something that any viewer watching this episode can take away. Like maybe you get the intro from your mom, your dad, really anyone in your university network that you could support, you think could support you. Maybe it's a professor or an alumni. And then from there, it's really just a question of reaching out to more people, putting out a few short episodes and scaling. So as you guys were building it, you eventually pivoted from the podcast to short form content. Tell me a little bit about what set up the framework for that pivot and why you guys did that.
Yeah, I made the pivot because while I really enjoyed interviewing people, I didn't believe that that format was correct for the mission that I wanted to execute on with our future. I wanted our future to become the go-to source and number one source of business content for Gen Z. And I realized that Gen Z wasn't listening to podcasts. They were spending their time on platforms like TikTok. What also TikTok does is it allows anybody to blow up, and it allows, with podcasting, it's a much harder for independent creators to actually get distribution. With TikTok, anybody can post a video, can go viral. You can't post a podcast and have it go viral on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So the distribution system was a lot more promising and exciting. And when I got my first video to hit, I think it was a video about Mark Zuckerberg or something, got like 1.6 million views. And from there, I was hooked because I saw all these eyes. I saw the opportunity to deliver education, information, entertainment at scale to the people that I really wanted to get in front of and reach. And never looked back since. I really believe that, people should, I teach people stuff and tell stories without wasting people's time. And I think Gen Z really appreciates that. We have short attention spans. We're interested in learning, but we like to do that in a quick and fun and digestible way. So I really think what we're doing now executes better on that original vision, and does so in the right way than how I started with. So it was just a bit of an evolution, but here we are 2 years in, and things are going great. And maybe soon enough, we'll get back into that long form stuff. Right? I'll get back into my podcast. But the pivot made a lot of sense for what I wanted to do.
What do you think about the business world is so appealing to Generation Zs beyond the fact that one day we're all going to enter it?
Yeah, well, I think young people are getting more interested and excited about business from a younger age now. I think that's a major difference between our generation and past generations. I think there's just a lot more information and media out there, and I think there's a lot more case studies. And I think the internet is very powerful too. So, I mean, over 60% of Gen Z wants to become an entrepreneur. That's incredible. I really don't think that was the case. I think in generations past, it was like get a stable job, start a family, do all these things. And now we realize that we don't need to adhere to that linear path. Life isn't linear, and we can build things from scratch. We can use the internet to build businesses. We can start companies. Investors will give college kids money. Those things are relatively new, in the past, decade or two of the Mark Zuckerbergs and, college dropouts and building companies on the internet. I just think that's very fresh. I think from a startup perspective, that's what makes it so exciting. From a business perspective, I think, young people are looking to get more involved in business from a young age because they understand how important, I guess, money is. I think there's more like attention to that. I think we're learning more from a young age just by virtue of media and such. And I also think there's an element of like, we want to grow up fast. Like we just want to get started and stuff. So from like a more traditional job perspective. But yeah, I really do think it's a brave new world for business and stuff, because we're seeing what's possible. Like we're seeing kids start things off their passion, they become businesses and they generate millions of dollars, and it's wild.
Yeah, that's super interesting. It's like Generation Z is being powered not only by the idea of hustle culture, but it's also the formation of a brand new future that we can all contribute to. Yeah, so I think as viewers watch our future, they can really feel like they can take a part of building the future.
Yeah,
so
totally.
To kind of close the episode, we talked about how Gen Zs can kind of do something similar just by leveraging their original network. But just to go a little bit more into depth, just share like one or two quick tips on how someone who's like really inspired by Michael, seen your post about how you can build a career by podcasting, can do what you do, or at least start scaling into a career of their own.
I guess my advice would be to get started with something, because momentum begets momentum, and it doesn't even need to be something that like you carry forth. For me, it was like I did end up carrying forth my podcast into a full-fledged media business, but I don't believe that that's the case for most people. I think it really is a great networking tool, but it doesn't need to just be a podcast like you're doing, right? Like you're embarking on this journey, you're one of the few. It's not for everyone. But I think there's just a ton of value if you're young in picking an idea that you're excited about and passionate about and using that to like represent yourself. So you have a startup idea, go and bring it to professors, go and bring it to your friends' parents. Show it's just such a clear sign of your intellect and your passion to be able to articulately convey a startup idea, even if like, it's not like, it's weird of me to say this. It's like, don't make up a startup just for the purpose of networking and looking cool or whatever, but like it really is a tool that you can use to meet whoever that you want to meet. If you like want to get into a certain industry, I truly believe that if you kind of represent yourself as trying to do something in that space on your own, and then bring that to more established folks who are in the space, they're going to be a lot more receptive to you than you just being a kid. Hi, like I really want an internship. I love this. So does everyone else. Everybody wants to work in that thing. But if you can bring like a unique offering, whether it's you're coming in the perspective, hey, I'd like to ask you questions about the startup I'm building that might apply to your company, or I'm doing a podcast, will you come in and give me some advice? It's just such a different offering. So if you truly want to be unique and seen, in a different light by people who are gatekeepers in the industries that you want to work in or the organizations you want to be a part of, you've got to find a unique offering, and you got to be able to sell it, and you got to be able to stand out from the crowd, because just wanting an internship and putting your resume in or asking for a phone call isn't enough. You've got to provide some value, or got to have something going for you beyond that.
I definitely think that's the case. In my experience, trying to look for jobs as a young person, you really need to find a way to differentiate yourself from the crowd. And similar to you, I really think that being entrepreneurial and once you start talking to these people and getting a sense of the ideas and the opportunities that are available in the space, will really quickly enable you to figure out how you can apply your gifts and talents. And I really think that anyone watching can really quickly turn around and start executing on some of those startup ideas, assuming that they're willing to kind of take the risk and roll with the punches.
Totally. It's not hard. You really just need to start, and then great opportunities will come about. Even if your startup doesn't become $1 billion company, or like it doesn't generate a single dollar, the journey is going to be extremely valuable, and it's going to give you something to focus on and something to do. So go ahead and start something. If you don't have a job or an internship or whatever, you're not, just start something, make a website for it, and then go and start talking to people about it. It's going to be a great start.
Yeah, I definitely think that's going to be the case. But like we both said, you just got to go out there and do it. So that's all the time we've had today, but super awesome talking to you, Michael. I think the viewers are going to love the advice, and hopefully they'll take the idea to head and start executing.